In today's class, the triggers. Okay, in SQL Server we have some triggers. So what is a trigger? I am going to cover what are different types of triggers we have and why we use them. Okay, now let's see. I have a table. So mostly in these scenarios only you will be using a trigger. I have a table. Okay, so the table has some ID, name and SSN number. Okay, this is my table. The table has ID, name and SSN number. If someone comes and updates this SSN number, what should I do? I should not allow him to update the SSN number. Or, okay, see, you can give security at the table level, but how can you give security at the column level? Okay, so you can give security at the database level, you can give security at the server level, you can give the security at the table level. If you want to give security at the table level, you will be using grant and revoke. But my scenario is that I want to provide security at this only particular column. That is one scenario. How can you provide? And other scenario. Okay, same table. Whenever if someone inserts the data, I should have some other table called ID, name and SSN. Okay, and I should also have called action. Now I have the ID 1, name as A, SSN as 101. Since I have inserted, so automatically what should the same value should be inserted into the other table. By automatically it should insert ID, name, SSN is 101, action is insert. Okay. Now if I update 101 to 102, then what happens? It should have 101 and along with that action it should have the date also, date which user did that. Okay, which user did that one. So date is something today's date, I'll give 01 Jan and the user it may be BB Bhaskar Badam. Next, when I again update it 101 to 102, what it should happen is that 101 I should have A, I have updated 101, it is a update old record. When I update it, old record is 101, right? So update old, then it is on the 2nd Jan BB. Then two records should be insert for the update. It should insert the old record, it should also insert the new record also. So new record, it is the update new. Okay, so it is 2002 Jan and BB. So I have couple of requirements. The first requirement is that if someone wants to access, if someone tries to update or someone tries to delete the data 102, delete the data from this column or this row, only this row, like if he deletes the data from this column where row ID is equal to 1, or if it tries to update the SSN column, okay, then what should I do? I should throw an error stating that he cannot update this column, or if someone tries to delete the data from this table, I should not allow him to delete the data. If someone that is the one scenario. Other scenario is that if someone inserts, updates or delete the data, I want to store that deleted data into some history table. This all should be done automatically. You will create a process once and you will be sitting quietly, that's it. At the back end, automatically the process should run every day. Okay, for doing that in the SQL Server we have a concept called triggers. Okay, we have a concept called triggers, TRIGGERS. Okay, whatever you did in the primary key constraints, right? Primary key constraint, check constraint, default constraint, that all things you can do by the trigger also. But as a performance point, triggers are not recommended. I'll show you why the triggers are not recommended. Okay, if you can do by the constraints, you can do. If you not, if you have only one option called trigger, then you should do by using triggers only. What this trigger does is that if you don't want other person to delete a record from this table, or some persons, if you don't want anyone to delete the record from this table, then what you are going to do? You are going to create a trigger for delete action. Okay, and in that what you are going to do? You are going to write some code where you will not allow that data to be inserted into a table. I will show how to write the code, and that is the one thing. And if you, there is a one more scenario, if you try to insert or if you try to update the data, automatically that data should be there in the history table also. For that purpose, you will create a trigger. Whenever someone inserts or updates data into the table, then what you are going to do, you are going to take the data in the trigger. So you are going to create a trigger for that insert and update actions, and after that you are going to write some code. What the code does, whatever the data you inserted, it will take the data and it will again insert the data into this table. It automatically does. How to do that, we are going to see step by step. So triggers, there are two types of triggers. Okay, there are two types of triggers. You can call it as for, after, both are same, and another one is a instead of. Okay, there are two types of triggers, for and after, and another is a instead of trigger. So what this for and after does, let's say if you have created a trigger for insert and you have written some code. Okay, so what it is going to do is that if you insert a record into the table, what happens? First the record will be inserted into the table, and after that this trigger will fire, because you create a trigger for insert, right? Then the trigger will fire. So first, since you have created a trigger for insert, what happens here? And it is a for trigger, for or after trigger, both are same. For trigger or after trigger, both are same. You can use any name. So since I have created trigger for insert, so when I insert, what happens? It will, since I have created trigger for insert, then the value will be inserted into the table, and later on the trigger will fire. Later on this code will execute. That is scenario. What is the instead of trigger? If I have the same thing for instead of, if I want to have the instead of trigger for insert code, what happens? When you try to insert, it will not be inserted into a table. Instead of, it will just execute the code that you have written. That's it. Okay. For means first so you might create a triggers based on, mostly you will be creating a triggers for insert, update, delete. This is the most commonly used trigger that you are going to do. Okay. So if you create for or after trigger, what is going to happen? For or after trigger for any of the one from this insert, update or delete. So what is going to happen? First the data will be inserted into the table, then the trigger code will be executed. But for instead of, if you create instead of trigger for insert, then if you try to insert the value, then what happens? Instead of inserting the value into the table, it will directly execute this trigger. That's it. That's the thing it is going to do. For example, we can go and see some other thing. Okay. So first we will create normal table. Create table. I can name it as table as test trigger. Okay. I want to have some values into the table, so just I will give id as integer, and I will give name. That's enough. Varchar of 10. Done. Now I have the values. So what I want, whenever I insert in whenever someone inserts or updates data into the trigger, I want to insert the same values in the other table. I want to have a history of that. Trigger underscore history. Okay. Now what the history table will have? It will have the id as integer. Done. Next, it will have the name, same size of that, varchar of 10. Then id name. It will have something like action, what action you have done, whether it's update or insert. Okay. Action, or I will give act. Action as varchar, and user id, which user id done that, user name, user id as varchar of some 100. And after that I want to have the action date also, on what day they have done. So I will give as date time. Okay. And I will give default. I can give default date time, right? So I will have the default also. I will not insert, by default it will take place. So get date. Okay. this is my table, for this is my other table. What I want to do is that whenever someone inserts the data into the table, automatically I want to, so this is my case. I'll explain you the example so that you will be clear. So I add ID and name in one table, and I am having ID, name, action and user ID. Next I will be having the date. So if I have the ID 101 and the name as A, done. So when someone inserts, automatically I should have that 101 A and it is insert, right? I should have action call in I, and the user ID, whoever user ID did that, it should have that user ID inserted into this, and the date, current date. I'll just write get date. Okay. So if someone updates 101 name to B, then what it should happen? 101, it should have the old record. It's nothing but update insert, right? Update old. When you're trying to update, there will be old record. So I'll be writing as this way: update old, and whoever user did get date. Next I should also have one more record for update insert, or else whichever. If I want to capture only the new value, it's okay. I can directly capture only the new one. I can only capture the new one. If I want, I can only capture the new one. If I don't want, it depends. It depends on the scenario. Okay. If I want to capture both, I can capture. If I want to capture only one, I can capture. Okay. Now, what I am going to do is that I am going to create a trigger for this. So how to create a trigger? Same. It is a one type of object. So you will write create trigger. Then you will give the trigger name. I will give the trigger name as trg underscore. I will give the table name test trigger. Okay. For what are the operations I want to use this trigger? Let's say I want to use this trigger for update. Okay. And basically you will create a trigger, and after that you are also going to give the table name also. On what is the table name? It is a test trigger. Yeah, test trigger, that's it. Is a test trigger, yeah, test trigger, done. For update, okay, I want to create this trigger for update. As what happens, since I said, right, whenever you create a trigger on the table, by default trigger creates two tables. One is called inserted and the other is called the deleted. By default, the trigger will automatically create a, suppose let's say on this table you have created a trigger. So whenever certain operation is done on the trigger on the table, so the trigger will fire. In the trigger, automatically there will be two tables. So if you are inserting the value, the values, inserted values, the structure of the tables will be by default of the same table structure. It will be by default, nothing to worry about them. Automatically the trigger creates two tables. If you try to insert, the new data will be in the inserted table and there will be no data in the deleted table. If you delete a record, then what happens? Let's say you create a trigger for delete, then what happens? Since you deleted the record, insert will have no data. You can see the data in the deleted table. By default it will have. And if you update, then what happening? The old data, see, if I update A to B, there is a name called A, 101A. If I update to B, 101A old record will be there in the deleted, and 101B, right, new record, that one will be there in the inserted table. So by default the system will store them. Now what is my scenario? If I insert a data, if I update the data on a table, if I update a data on this table, okay, I am not capturing the data for insert, just I am capturing data for updates. Then what I want? Okay, I want to take that updated data and insert it. Whatever the data I have updated, I want to insert the data into this table. Okay, now so what I will do? Simple. Insert into the table name. What is the table name? Test history, right? Test history. Then now I'll select the values from the trigger. Select ID. It will have the same column names. Name, done. After that I want, so it is I'll be getting this data from the inserted. From inserted. Okay, inserted means if I updated the data, the old data will be stored in the deleted table and the new data will be stored in the inserted. It is by default you will be having that. Okay, I have the name. Along with that I will be creating some derived columns. Since it is a inserted, so I will name it as update insert. Okay, so action type I have given as 10 only, right? So I will write UI, means update insert, u underscore I. Okay, next what I am going to do, this is one, I will name it as action ACT. Next, user ID. So in order to get the user ID, I think you will be getting called user sys username, system user. So by default you will be getting the system user. When you do the system user, I think this is a syntax, or I'll just select sys system user. So when I do, am I getting the system user? Yeah, I'm getting system user. Okay, so they are like system predefined system user functions. You can run them. Okay, so when I use a system user, it will automatically get the current user whoever running on the system. It will get that current user ID as user ID, comma get date. So I will not insert any date. Okay, so for that here I will manually name ID comma name comma ACT comma user ID. Done. This is for the inserted. Then what I will do, Control C. At the top I want to create Control V. Here trigger history. Instead of inserted, now I will get the data from the deleted. That's it. So it is update delete, update old record. That's it. Okay, so this is my trigger. So once you see the example, I'll always end the trigger with go. Now I'll create a trigger, and I'll create one more trigger for the insert also. This is for update. Okay, I'll copy the same trigger, and I want to create a trigger for insert also. Control V. It is, I'll name the trigger name with update insert. I'm doing insert, right? So I'll write I. Here it will be for insert. Now what I will do, the same structure. Inserted means the data will be there only in the inserted table. I'll select here, the operation will be insert. That's it, done. Okay, I'll get that. Now I'll create a trigger for inserted also on the table. Done. Now see here, I'll try to insert the values. First we'll do a select star from. I created two triggers now. I have created two triggers. So just I'll paste it. Now when I do select star from, I don't have any value yet. See, I don't have any value. Now I'm going to insert value into the table, above table, because we created trigger on the test trigger, right? I'm going to insert values, insert into test trigger. Now I am going to give the values. So in the values I'll give ID 1 comma A. I have given that. Okay. So when I insert, automatically see, actually when I insert one record, what it should do, it should show only one rows affected, right? But it's showing two rows affected, because one row will be mine and other row it is being inserted into the this history table. How it is being inserted? Because we have created two triggers on this table. One is for the update, one is for the insert. That is for update, for insert. So what it when we use the for update and for insert, what system does? You can give for or after, both are same. For or after, both are same. Okay, both will work. But normally we use for update or for insert. For delete also. What it does? First it will insert the values into the table. That is the one record. Next, it will get value from this table and it will insert into the history table. That is the other record. Now if I go and see the history table, it will clearly show when the record has been inserted and what is the structure of that. See, and who inserted it. See, this is my inserted record. Action is insert. I have given the action type of I, right? I have given calculated value I for insert. See, so it will also give the system user, which user is currently on the system, and it will also give the ID. Let's say if I try to update it, update same table, update test trigger set name equal to B, where ID equal to 1. Now when I update it, what happens now? See here, previously when I inserted, I got only 2 records. One record in the messages I got as 2, right? 2 rows affected. That is, one it is inserted into the main table and the other one it is inserted into the other table. But now when I update, I will be getting 3 rows affected. See, the first record update means I have created trigger for update, right? So by default I am updating that one will be updated in the table. So this is for that one. Next one is that in the update trigger I have created 2. By default the deleted table will have the old data and the inserted table, this inserted table will have the new data. So when you update, the old record will be there in the deleted table and the new record will be there in the inserted table. So that is for the 2 records. Now if I go and see the table, right, select star from test trigger insert, now you can see 2 records, update old, update insert. Okay, are you able to get my point? It's kind of trigger. If you go and see, you will be learning lot of things. Now what I want, I'll create a trigger. Okay, I'll name the trigger as TRG test, same test trigger delete on test trigger table. Now I'll give instead of delete, instead of delete, that's it, instead of delete, as I'll print some action, print no deletion, no deletion is allowed, or delete, you don't have access. Okay, see one more thing, actually my output should be displayed like this. See, when I print this, okay, when I print this command, what it's going to show, I am going to show you don't have access, but I want to have some code in between don and T. So if I give quote here, what happens, it is going to take only this one as a comment, it is going to ignore the other one because the comment starts in the quotes, right? So for this purpose you will give double quotes. When you give double quotes in the print, it will print a single quotes, you don't. Okay, so I'll give go. Now I'll print this, I'll execute this trigger. So now I got the data. Okay, see now what I am going to do. When I try to delete, the table has how many records we have in the table? I am having only one record in the test master. So I'll delete from test trigger where ID equal to 1, because that is the record we are having in the table, right? When I delete, what happens? See, you don't have access to delete. Now let's see the data, whether the data is deleted or not. Select star from test trigger. Yeah, when I do this, still you can see the record. The record will not be deleted from the table. See, still you can see the record, because what it does, previously we have created for update and insert. When we do the update and insert, what the trigger is going to do is that, so this is my table, I have created trigger for update and I have created trigger for insert and I have created trigger for delete. In the update and insert I have written some code, in the delete I am written some code. Okay, this delete is instead of trigger, because triggers are 2 types, one is after or for, and there is a instead of trigger, right? After or for, and there is instead of trigger. So what is going to do now, if I insert, and this is code for insert and delete. So what happens when I try to insert the record into a table or update a record, first that action, it is going to perform that action on the table, it will insert or update, then after that it will go and execute the triggers accordingly. But when you give instead of delete, whenever you try to delete the record, instead of deleting the table data from the table, it will just go and execute the trigger. Since you are given instead of, so that delete will not occur on the table, it will just go and execute the code that you have written for the trigger for the delete purpose. Okay, are you able to get my point?
Yeah.
Everyone, hello?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of triggers are two types. One is a instead of, and other one is this one, for or after. For or after, what it does first, since I have given the for or after, so what it is going to do in this trigger, these triggers are going to fire after inserting the data into a table or after updating the data. First one is update and second one is insert, right? I have created two triggers for update and insert. So what is going to happen after inserting the data only, this trigger will fire. After inserting the data, this trigger will fire. After inserting the data into the table, then this trigger is going to fire. Sorry. After updating a data into a table, then this trigger is going to file. After inserting the data into the table, then this trigger is going to file. But here, when you try to delete a data, instead of performing the delete operation on the table, it will come and execute this trigger. That's it. In this trigger, you are clearly mentioned, you have printed, right? Print, you don't have access to the delete, so it will just print that command. That's it. It will not, even though if you delete or if you do anything, it will not do. Truncate will happen, but not delete. Okay, so this is a way how you are going to do the trigger operation. But the disadvantage of the trigger is, if you try to insert 1000 records, okay, if you try to insert 1000 records, what happens? For each record, the trigger will fire. It will insert, it will allow that if you manually insert 1000 records bulk, or if you try to update 100 records at the same time. Okay, so what happens? Instead of updating all the 100 records one by one, all the 100 records at the same time, it will update record by record. It will update record by record when you create a trigger. So because of that, the performance will be very less. Performance very less means performance will be less. It takes more time to update the data. That's the reason mostly if you want to create a trigger where suppose if they ask you to create a trigger on the table where it will be having some millions of transactions per day, then you should not create a trigger on the table, because if you create, then it is a place where it consumes more memory, because whenever you try to insert one record into a table, automatically at the same time, if you create a trigger, automatically that record will be inserted into inserted table of the trigger. As I said, the trigger will have two tables, right? Inserted and deleted. By default, you will be having them. You can see it here. Automatically, how the data is inserted into the table, because it is by default. When you insert the data into the table, when you update the data into the table, automatically the old record will be there in the deleted table and the new record will be there in the inserted table. Means you are inserting them into two different records, right? It's nothing but it's a performance issue. Instead of doing one operation at the time, you are doing 3 operations, means it takes more time. That's the reason you will never use a trigger on on the tables. If you have some tables that is important for you and if no one modifies them very frequently, then you can use a trigger.